Yo, what is good, everybody? I hope you all enjoyed the long weekend, enjoyed the day off in the market today. That's what I did, and frankly, in today's video, we got a lot to talk about. There's some big money opportunities setting up, especially in oil. So you're really going to want to see what I have to say about oil. That's going to be right off the bat, so just stick around until that, and if you like it, stick around even more. So we're just going to get into it. Make sure to show the video some love, give it a like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So, start off, we got oil here. So, oil here, it's been consolidating for several weeks, and nothing goes down forever, nothing goes up forever, and most importantly, nothing goes sideways forever, which actually isn't really something I've ever said, but this is bound to break out one way or the other, and it's going to break out massively. When I say massively, I'm talking about like $20, $30 moves, something like this. So that's a $20 move right there. And to the downside, you got big support down here. So this is an incredible opportunity to do something like a straddle. So I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say you should really base what you do your trades around. I'm not responsible for any of your gains or losses, but what I see here, in my opinion, is this is a really good area to set up for a breakout from one side to the other. Now that's where you position yourself long and short, and it's going to go one way or the other, and it's going to go one way or the other by a lot. So what you can do is set your position right in the middle of this consolidation, and you set your stop losses for, let's say, you think it's going to go up, and you straddle, so you have a short position as well. Once it breaks the outer boundary of this range up here, so that's going to be like 83 to 84ish, that's where you have your stop loss for your short side. So once it breaks out, your short position closes, and you just ride that long position up to the upside. And same thing with the short, you kind of wait until it breaks that outer boundary of this range to close your long position. Your long position gets stopped out, and you ride your short for however long, till it finds supports. And along the way, that's just kind of whoops, sorry about that. That's just kind of something you kind of watching along the way to see when you think it's going to bottom. So oil is going to break out, so it's going to have a disgusting move soon. It cannot do this much longer. One thing we can kind of take away from that and know why it won't be in this range for much longer is these Bollinger Bands and the Keltner Channel. So the Keltner Channel is this blue line here, Keltner Channel, and then the Bollinger Bands is this yellow line. So when the Bollinger Bands inside the Keltner Channel, it means tightening volatility. If you've been watching my videos for a while, I've been able to tell you when the market's going to break out, like down to the hours pretty much. I've said, we're going to break out tomorrow after several days of consolidation, just because I'm able to look at these lines and interpret what it means. So when you see it on the weekly, that's what we just looked at. That the higher the time frame this is happening on, the bigger the move will be. So if it's on the weekly, the move is going to be insane. Same thing with the daily. It's been doing this for a long time. So do not miss out on this. Oil is going to move massively, and the tickers, UCO, that's to go long, and SCO, that's to short. Those oil ETFs, leveraged oil ETFs, when oil moves 1%, this moves, I believe it's 2x. So if this moves 1%, SCO moves 2%, and if it moves 10%, it's going to move 20%. So don't sleep on oil. Keep an eye on this. Once it breaks out, we're going to be keeping a close eye on this, but to the upside, I think I want to be biased to the upside. It's tricky to say. The daily does not look fantastic, but I'm staying unbiased, but I do think it might go to the upside just because, I feel like it would have continued to the downside if it was bearish, but it's really been fighting the trend. It's been having these massive wicks to the downside and then shoots right back up. And the weekly, you got an interesting MACD cross on the weekly, so very interesting spot. I'm still unbiased, but I would like it to go to the upside. It doesn't have to. That's kind of the general direction I'm looking for. We're just going to have to wait and keep our eye on this. So on to natural gas here. I've never seen anything like this. It just continues to die. Doesn't really bounce. It managed to fight for like a week or so, but eventually broke support again. But it's just I don't feel comfortable being bearish because major support here for one, massive supports. It's so insanely oversold, like historically oversold. You have these divergences. The MACD crossed over, histogram's green on the daily and onto the weekly. This is insane. This shows that there is really a lot of momentum behind this drop, um, but it's so oversold. The last time it was this oversold was in 2016. That's like however many years ago, like 7 years or something like that. Um, there's I've never seen anything like this. It's just really hard to say what I want to do because the fundamentals don't really line up, especially at least in terms of like the weather and like supply and demand, output, all of those factors, especially like Russia. They're pulling some strings with like uh, kind of limiting how much access the world has to natural gas because they have a lot of reserves. So there's just all these factors and they just aren't really lining up. So it's really hard to say what I want to do on a fundamental basis because it just doesn't really make any sense. So natural gas is just kind of something. I mean, it's scary to short it when it's dropped like this much. Like, I mean, look at this drop. That is absurd. Nothing but down. So I don't like shorting things that are so unbelievably oversold. Like, it's just kind of dumb to do that. But how much lower can it go is really the question. I'm not saying to buy into this because um, it's not really showing any signs of going up, even though nothing goes down forever. It's just not really following logic, really. So, natural gas, kind of sit back and wait for it, I guess. Not too much else to say besides that. US dollar, interesting spot. We said if it breaks this, it's going to keep going up. We said there's a lot of incentive to get up into this region to test liquidity. This really big red candle here. We said we're probably looking for this to get back up into here, all the way up to like low mid 105s, and it's been doing that. It's kind of the process we're seeing. It's testing that liquidity of this massive drop here. So, actually, yeah, zooming in now, this looks really like the main area that it would want, and that's really what we've hit. So, maybe it drifts up around here a little longer. We'll see what it wants to do. These are the two big trend lines to be watching right now. Not too much to say with the DXY. On top of that, it's not really as important as it used to be. What you would really want to see for the DXY to matter is if it breaks, I guess 100. That's a pretty big psychological level. And talking about this, that next big area is going to be like 99 to 98. So, US dollar, we'll see what it wants to do. It might want to roll over actually. Let me just take a look at the indicators quick. So, indicators aren't really telling us too much. Looks pretty neutral to me. But you do have some divergences here. So, if it doesn't invalidate these divergences by really proving its momentum, I think it's going to be coming back down. So, we'll be keeping an eye on that, testing the area we wanted it to test, and now we're just going to see what it wants to do from here. Apple, it's getting bearish. It has not been able to make that push for that gap fill, which we've been looking for. So, this thing might topple, and if it topples, it's going to topple hard because this was quite the move here, which was the move we were looking for. We were targeting all the way up here when it was down here, and now we're here. So, everyone's targeting that gap fill for those last few dollars, and that might not happen. You got the MACD curling down, RSI's curling down, and this indicator, which is incredibly consistent, and I find to be incredibly accurate as well, is kind of showing that Apple could be topping here. So it doesn't have to top here. The market could continue melting up, but the longer it takes, the less likely it is to do that. It can't just sit up here forever. It can't. When you have this kind of a massive move up, you can't just like go sideways and then just keep going up. It kind of has to be really quick, trap bears into it fast, or it's just going to die. So it has to do this sooner. It has to make that move soon, or else it's not going to happen. Same thing with Tesla, kinda. Tesla, this was the move we've been looking for. We were looking at 200 all the way since down here, really. That wasn't our main target. We were just looking for massive upside, and we got our massive upside now. So I'm not really bullish up here anymore. I was bullish down here, and I'm not bullish anymore. I'm more bearish than bullish. I'm not sure how long it's going to take for that to kind of show. The MACD starting to top out here. Same with the RSI crossing down. It was oversold. So you got these divergences forming now. and you got a lot of resistance. You got a major supply zone right here, massive previous support, which is now a disgusting resistance. It was a support for like 2 years, I believe, and it's resistance. You're not going to break it on the first time. That's not how it works. It won't break on the first try, and you can see that. That's what I also said. It hasn't been able to break it, so actually it has had a couple attempts, so it's been kind of drifting around that resistance, so maybe it pushes through, hits this golden pocket around 240, but ultimately this right here, this area, it looks like a diamond wall to me, and that's not too much higher, so got this trend line here. This trend line I've had up for a very long time, since this right here. You go into the weekly, and I think this might be the way to draw this trend line, the best way to draw this trend line. You can see we got rejected from it, but maybe we draw like this, and we'll see. That'll be a big resistance as well. That'll be one that'll be very relevant if it manages to kind of break this region. We'll put another trend line or move this trend line up there and see how it interacts with that. So Tesla, kind of waiting for it. It looks like it's running out of steam here. Nothing goes up forever. So Amazon here, this is what we were looking for. We said this thing needs to cool off a little more. Whether it's just going to be, I think we were right around here. I said whether it's going to be sideways or we drift down a little. It needs some more cooling off here, because this run was it's not sustainable. But we said once it breaks out of this channel, I can see this gap filling. Very likely to fill that gap just because of how big it is. Really big incentive to fill it. That's what happened. We broke out of this channel, filled it, and now we're just kind of looking at this cool off. So it might need some more downside. Right now it's at a pretty big area of demand where buyers are willing to step in, take the chances, and buy it up. So that's where we're seeing buyers come in right at the top of this zone. It's kind of a messy zone here. You can see it has that bell curve kind of formation. So you'll see a lot of accumulation in the center and distribution as it moves to the outer bounds of this bell curve shaped volume node. So not really too much to say here. We're just going to kind of see how it interacts with this region, because if it doesn't, I can see it coming all the way back down, has some gaps to fill down here. So we'll see what it wants to do. Not too much to say. It's been doing what we're doing. We're going to see if it bounces from around here or continues to sell off. So biotech, this is very interesting here. So looking back in the past, this area was a major resistance. You can see we couldn't break it for several weeks. We finally broke it, and we went parabolic, came back down, tested it, kept going up, and this created this divergence here, which is kind of interesting here. I actually missed it, unfortunately. I didn't see this divergence, but in hindsight, it was very clear that this was going to fail and break that trend line support, this trend line right here. So now it's testing it again, and what I've been saying is the really important line to hold is 660 right here. So it held this mid region of this range right here, which was that range we were trading a few weeks ago, like a few months ago, 770 to 660. So it's holding this mid region of this range, but the more important line to hold is 660 if it gets below that range, because below that, then you got to focus on that $6 level, and under that it can free fall. So very interesting spot. We're just going to kind of see how it interacts with this range. Biotech overall, this I think could be what we're looking at, a head and shoulders. Now if this is the case, this is a very consistent, very clear, and very easy pattern to play. So put XBI down on your brokerage, whatever chart you're watching. Put this down and watch for a head and shoulders. If it starts showing some resistance around here, this could be a head and shoulders. And it would make a massive drop. This is a, let's just say it does a perfect double top from that previous peak. That would be, I believe that's 36%, because these are 3x. So that's like 30-40% move if you catch this short in its leverage ETF, which would be LabD. So keep an eye on this. If this XBI does a head and shoulders, this will move up 30-40%. So keep an eye on it. Semiconductors, very weird spot here. We've been talking about how it needs to hold this range, because if it holds this range, it can bounce off of it and make a new high. That's just kind of the rules of Elliott wave. So you have your wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's kind of an awkward count here. Wave 3 would normally go a little higher, so we just kind of have to see what it wants to do right here. This could be a bull flag where, or even an expanding wedge actually. So in expanding wedges, it usually breaks the side that is less steep. So in this case, that upper line, and it would just keep going. So that would very likely result in this being the end of wave 3. So as you can see, that would, wow, that is insane. This might be the best way to draw it. These peaks are really confusing for me to know which way I want to draw it. Just either this is the count, which I don't like at all, or it's a complicated correction that looks like this. So very weird spot here, but yeah, we'll see how it interacts with this region. Really, the most important area is this zone right here. So if we start testing it, it's going to be important it holds. If it doesn't, you can see a major free fall if it doesn't hold this region. So keep an eye on semiconductors that result in AMD going to, I believe, the 20s. I'm pretty sure that's the level, or that area, the 20s. So keep an eye on semiconductors. Yeah, just see what it does around here, and if it, I guess, yeah, it's hard to say. It's sort of in no man's land right now. I think we need a couple days to kind of see what it wants to do, maybe even a week. So not too much to say here. Kind of waiting for the macro to give us a setup and some structure to work with. So same thing, this is semiconductor ETF. Just kind of watching it. SRXS, very interesting. You got that wedge here. This is semiconductors. Massive wedge setting up. The last time I saw the setup was back here, and we caught this in the Discord. My minimum target, we bought in at the low 30s. I think we were, what did we buy? We were buying in right here. I had a minimum target of, I believe it was 52. I'm pretty sure it was like 52. And we voted up, we got some really nice gains with that. And it went parabolic, it just kept going. So very interesting here. If that happens a second time, I would expect it to probably test this prior support. This is a big support, and we finally broke it, which is kind of interesting. Kind of a quick glance. I'm not sure if this is, yeah, looks like that's a pretty important support that it might be holding for now. This is also a wedge here, so this looks kind of like some sort of reversal structure. So keep an eye on this thing. This could be setting up to get some upside. VIX, not too much to say. You had a lot of supports around here. Also had a wedge sort of shape. So very interesting here. I'm not really sure what to say about the VIX right now. Hurst theory wise, which is like cycle analysis, it should be in a bottoming phase, and after that bottoming phase, it shoots up, but it's kind of a process right now. I don't see any gap to the downside, which is pretty big actually. I don't see incentive to go to the downside, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying it's not gonna go down, but in the past when we've had like this gap right here, or this gap right here, I was always like, there's incentive to go down. There's a gap down here that is probably going to fill, and there's no gap, so I don't really see an incentive for this to go down, but I do see some good incentive to go to the upside. So we'll keep an eye on this thing. Might want to level out a little more, but I think this thing could be setting up for some more upside into the future. So going on to the VIX, it's going to tell us a lot about kind of what we're expecting from the market all around. So on the SPY here, we got some interesting setups here. So the longer time frames are really setting up for a major drop here. Every single time the MACD crosses down on the daily, you get some disgusting downside. So let me clean this up a little. Actually, before I do that, I'm just kind of going to explain this. So what we've been looking for since all the way back here in October is an ABC structure, which however that was going to be drawn out. Now the scale that we're looking at, I've been saying this for literal months, we can see 430 to 440, because that's going to make this C wave equal to wave A if it gets to around 436. And I've also talked about that very tiny gap that's at 436 during this drop. So no one talks about it, but there's a very tiny gap somewhere in here. So you can only see it on like the 15-minute chart, so it'll take a while to go back to it. But if you want, go look for it yourself. It's somewhere in that drop. So anyways, it's looking like it's topping out. Just based on the past, every time this crosses, you see and you get a disgusting drop. Just look for yourself. So same thing with this indicator. This is very consistent on the higher time frames. You can see it's called the bottoms, um, and it can get kind of wonky sometimes when you have these like divergences forming, and it still kind of tells you that it's bullish, and then you get that rip. You get that rip called this bottom right here, it's like on the day basically, uh, literally on the day. So it's it's looking for a top here, based on the factors that you're kind of calculating and taking into consideration. So interesting spot here. You having an issue at the top of that volume gap. What needs to happen is so you break this volume gap. This is what we've been talking about. Every time it goes into this, it goes right through it, no matter which way that is. So I can take this off, make it a little more clear. So you go into this volume gap. An example right here. You go right through it. You go right up through it. You go right down through it. You go right up through it. You go right down through it. You can see what I'm talking about. It's so obvious. And that's what I was saying. Once we start going into this region, first off, we needed to do it sustainably. So I said, this move we probably won't be able to get through it just because we've only gone up right into it, and we got that pullback. And I said, now it's primed, and that's what happened. We went right through it, and now there's this tiny demand zone here that is holding. Buyers are coming in here, but I don't think it's strong enough. The macro picture of the market seems to be pretty weak as well, but I feel like there could be a chance that we just manage to keep going up from here. I don't favor it, but I do think it's possible, and so that's why I'm not completely set on it just going straight down. So while I'm biased to the downside, I would keep caution for any kind of move that gets back above like 410, 411, and on ES that level would be 4116. So yeah, like right here, that white line. So you can see that that's been a major level in the past, major support, resistance. You can see what I'm talking about. So if it breaks that, SPY's going straight to 430. There's no question about it. That's what I've been saying for a very long time. It's like since back here, I've been saying I've been looking for 430. So if you get above, which equivalent to 4116, 4160. Sorry, on ES that equates to like 414, I guess, on SPY. So if you start getting back above that, look out, be careful. You got that fib retracement as incentive to move up to that zone. There's so many reasons. You got this gap here. There's so many reasons. It's just this right here, that volume node. You can kind of see where this cuts off. This is where the bulls are having an issue, right? Let me kind of delete that. So this is a major supply zone. You get out of this volume gap, and you're met by sellers. So this is where it's having a lot of trouble. You can see that this tops out right here. So if you get back above this supply zone, you get back above that 4160 level. There's a lot of resistance right here. The macro is looking really bad. It looks really bearish. But if it can defy that and get it back above that resistance and spark more of a melt up, which is completely possible, it can happen. So don't be in denial if it just starts squeezing back up to the upside. But it looks much more like, I guess, weighing your probabilities. It doesn't look like it can keep going from here, but it is possible. So this is the big trend line here. If it breaks this line, you can see some really nasty downside. I'm talking an instantaneous break. This area is definitely going to get tested. So let me zoom in a little more so you can see what I'm talking about right here. So give me a second. So the 380s here, this is also just kind of like a prime area that the market kind of revolves around. You can see there's a lot of like, I guess, like consolidation range bound in this region. It's like 390 to the low 370s. That's pretty nasty, but interesting. You also have this fib support, which definitely is relevant as well. Resistance, support. So it's a really interesting spot. I think we're about to get the next big shift of the markets, where you're going to see a very clear and very obvious trend. and it looks like it wants to go down. Bulls are fighting. Bears were actually about to pull it off. We were about to get a pretty disgusting move on Friday, but the Bears failed to kind of hold below this low right here. That would have started the C wave, which is kind of the big structure we've been looking for this entire time. So, like this, but that didn't happen. Bears failed to stay below that low. I think that was just because this was a pretty big drop here, um, and it just wasn't sustainable because if it broke this, it would have had to keep going. That's a pretty nasty sell off. So it wasn't able to do it. But now you're going to be coming back up to this trend line resistance. So this is going to be a pretty big resistance. If you break it, you can see a really fast squeeze because a lot of people are going to bet that it's not going to be able to break it, and if it does, they're all going to flip sides, and you're going to see a nice squeeze, which you also have a lot of liquidity to test in this region. So there's some incentive to squeeze back up into this area, but the macro is looking really bad. It doesn't look very bullish anymore. So if you want that 430, I think you need some more consolidation or some more downside for it to be able to move up to 430 on SPY, and just the whole market, Apple to 162, fill that gap. So I think the market needs a little more time, a little more cooling off if it wants to see 430. So that's kind of the whole summary. If it wants to go up, it needs a little more downside. And other than that, there's not too much to say. So if you watched the whole thing through, make sure to show the video some love, give it a like and subscribe. And peace out, guys.